The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Thomas Sanherho. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Dom.
And Father Michael Gossett. Hi, Father Michael.
Hey, Dom.
So, folks, this is a spoiler-free zone. That's right, there will be no Star Wars spoilers on this podcast. For that, you'll have to go to Secrets of Star Wars to get spoiled over there. But on this podcast, there's no spoilers. I know that's high on people's concerns lately. So, actually, what we're talking about is the news lately has been full of this one story. In fact, it keeps coming around. People's concerns related to the Ring video cameras, the Ring, not just the doorbell per se, although that's part of it, but the Ring doorbell security system, security cameras, the various cameras that they own, and the privacy concerns related to it. Now, were you two on the panel when we talked about Ring sharing access with police in a way? Were you? That might have been a different.
I don't know that I was on that one. I think that was
I
a
don't think
different.
so.
Okay, good. So that we can talk about it fresh together then. So there's a couple of different aspects of the story. So just to the background, Ring Video, Ring.com, was a small startup based out of California that started with a doorbell a few years ago. It was an internet-connected doorbell, so that when someone approached it, didn't even have to ring it necessarily, but even approached it or rang it, it would have a video call that would start, and you could talk to the person through it through your phone from wherever you are on the internet, or you could just watch the video later. And it became a big security thing. And in fact, you see on the nightly news all the time Ring video cameras that have captured delivery men doing dumb things and that sort of stuff. So so that was fine. And then they've expanded into different sort of security cameras, for around your house, the outside of your house, inside of your house. Now they have a security alarm system. So that's really expanded. And they were bought by Amazon a few years ago, and now they're part of the big conglomerate. All right. So earlier this year, there was a story about how Ring was working with police to they were forming partnerships with police, giving them equipment and giving them access not to the videos itself. That would be really bad. But it gave them access to this social network of Ring video owners to allow the police to sometimes ask particular Ring video owners if they would be willing to give them the video footage so they help them solve a crime. So they didn't have actual access to the footage. They had access to the owners, and it was anonymized and that sort of thing. And people could say no. I mean, you're under no obligation to give it to the police. But some folks felt that was a step too far. And so there was a little bit of a controversy over that. And then there's this latest one, which is, it turns out that it started as a quote-unquote hack. Now, that term is loaded and often misused in the media, but hackers were getting into people's Ring camera systems and were watching their video, and because the cameras have microphones and speakers, they were talking to people on the other side, including the big one was this one where people had put a camera in their kids' room, which, frankly, I think that's a bad idea, but okay. They put a camera in their kids' room, and someone was talking to their kids, pretending to be Santa through the camera. So, oh my gosh, people are hacking the system. So, and then it turns out what it was is people had bad password hygiene and the hackers were just getting in that way. All right. So all that said, what do you guys think of this just from the top down view of what we've talked about so far from the heights here about this whole problem, quote unquote? Is this an Amazon Ring problem? Is this a users setting things up problem. What do you think of all of this? Father Michael, let's start with you.
Yeah, I guess just when all these things sort of came about and you started seeing advertisements for it, I was impressed. It's a cool idea, especially the idea of someone ringing your doorbell at home, and whether you're there or not, you can see who's there. Cool, very cool. And just the internet's amazing, and all this technology is amazing. But like everything, yeah, if we don't take it seriously with passwords and security hygiene, like you said, I feel like that's a big part of it. That maybe just in general, we are too blasé about just how much these things intrude on our lives. I think we've talked about like the Alexa and Google Home before, and just it's always there, it's always listening, and just not taking that seriously. We're inviting not just the companies, but like you said, any malicious person who has the ability and just the time to do it. And so I feel like a lot of it is on people who buy this stuff to take it seriously. But when it comes to cooperating with the law, or companies have a responsibility as well. But if we're going to buy into it, we have to be careful.
Thomas, what do you think? Does the consumers have a greater responsibility for setting these things up and managing them responsibly? I mean, or are we too lax in general as consumers?
I think that these companies could do a better job educating people, and that's really they need to start stepping forward and educating people in what safe password hygiene looks like. What does a secure system look like? I think that a lot of people don't even know that if they have a wireless access point in their house that they bought, that they need to go in and disable the administrative rights on that device. A lot of people don't even know that that's a thing, and you have to go in and do that. Otherwise, I can just drive down the neighborhood, connect to somebody's Wi-Fi, and go in through the administrative portal on it and change any settings I want to. And that's not something that people think about. That's not a thing that they're used to doing.
And frankly, it's probably way above most people's technical capabilities to do that. They don't make it easy for the owner to do that too.
Exactly. And that's not something that because most I'm not sure if it's just that these companies have never really had a reason to do it or what, but it seems like if they're making these devices, they should be responsible with the security of them as well. And part of installing and setting up the Ring device should be a discussion about what is a secure password and why you want a secure password.
Right. After the fact, as it turned out that all of these Ring systems that were hacked were the people who had the intrusions were they had reused passwords across multiple sites. This is something we just talked about last week on this show. Mm-hmm. They reused passwords across multiple sites, and those sites had been hacked. So the passwords were out there, and so the hacker, quote unquote, was just trying usernames and passwords. It's just a giant dictionary attack. They run tens of thousands of these, and every once in a while they'll hit one because people reuse passwords. And so as soon as you do that, you've got the keys to the kingdom. So Ring, Amazon sent out an email to all Ring owners, and I'm a Ring owner, so I got the email, and they kind of explained the facts about password security. Here's what happened in the hack, and here's what you do. And the first thing they said was to enable two-factor authentication, which is nice that they now have that. Of course, it's not real good two-factor authentication. It's the text message kind, which, as we discussed last week, is better than nothing, but is second best to the real third-party authenticator app sort of two-factor. And they also suggest, which is a good one, is instead of sharing passwords, they let you have shared users, so that I don't know how much more secure. You can tell me what you think. Is this more secure that my wife and I have the same username and password that we both use to access it, although it's unique to Ring, or that we have two usernames and two passwords that we used to? Now, is that not two vectors for attack at this point instead of one? What do you think? Or four if we have a family of four who all have access?
Right.
What do you think? Is that better or worse?
The issue with that is that it removes the amount of times that you have to reset a password or write down a password or remind someone of a password. And so it actually is better to have multiple users that can log into the account because, and this is the thing I always remind people about hacking. Hacking is a social engagement.
Yes.
It is not a person sitting at a computer typing up a whole bunch of stuff. It's always about a social engagement. And I can promise you with this Ring stuff, these guys probably didn't even know they were hacking into Ring devices. They were just trying the passwords that they got off of a list against a bunch of IP addresses that might have been in a range, and they got a hit. And then they go, okay, well, then they query the device, see what it is. Oh, it's a camera. That's awesome. And then move from there to do all the other stuff that they want to do.
Yeah, some of eventually, I think according to one of the articles I was reading, somebody figured out that Rings had this, where there was a way to particularly attack Rings. There was a they call it dark web. I mean, it all seems very shadowy. It was a website where someone had this tool that you could use to run your database of hacked passwords and usernames through it to get to try it against Ring devices. So it actually, in this case, they did know. But yes, in fact, Ring is probably better secured than most internet cameras out there, because there are a lot of systems out there, a lot of cameras that are cheap, third party, a no-name brand, all manufactured off some factory line in Asia where they just throw some really, but I don't want to be stereotyping because it's Asia or whatever. It could be just as easily, some factory in America. It's everything's built in Asia right now. But these are not secure. They don't bother being secure, and they may even have, for all we know, the malware being installed on the factory floor.
On it right there, yeah.
and that's why, like in my house, I have Ring cameras all around the outside. I have it on my driveway and in the backyard, and I have a Ring video doorbell, but I don't have one inside. I have had cameras hooked up inside, but I only ever connect them when I'm away. So when there's nobody in the house. Yeah, and that's the thing is that I'm pretty liberal when it comes to that sort of thing, but even I have a line that I'm drawing of what I'm comfortable doing. I do not want cameras inside my house, and I don't. I have the sliding little door on all my webcams on my computer and on my kids' computers, and because I don't trust it, and I'm sure Apple's security is good, but I don't trust it. So I think that's part of it too, is you have to be aware of, the way convenience and security, you got to lean towards security and privacy in these things a lot more than we do, I think. And you look at people who are more knowledgeable about technology, they're the ones who are more skeptical. And that should tell you something.
I think it's worth being careful, especially when something, I don't know, many of the things we use on the internet are at least a little bit of a remove from us. When it comes to something like this, where it's like, here, look what I'm doing with my family every single day. Look when I leave my house. Look at the different things that are going on. Or like in the case of some of these hacks that harassing people or just freaking them out, that when you have technology that's this integrated into your home, then I think, like you said, just leaning towards security is absolutely worth it.
Right. And there's only so much we can expect people to do. Change your passwords every 3 to 6 months. I have hundreds of passwords because I use a password vault. I use password software, and I have a unique password for every site I go to. If I change my passwords every 3 to 6 months, I would be constantly changing my passwords. And that is a huge hassle because, frankly, they don't make it easy, especially when they tell me, no, you can only use between 8 and 12 letters, and it has to have these special characters, but not any of these. I'm like, what a hassle, Just let me use whatever I want for a password, beyond a certain length. Anyway,
well, and then those aren't actually good security measures anyway. So
it doesn't matter.
It's a whole nother debate.
Right.
But I think it's some of it is incumbent on companies to get a little more savvy about this stuff and realize that I like the fact that they're making it so that you can have multiple users on the account, because that is that's a point of weakness, because the more often you have to change that password, the less secure that password's going to get by default, and the more chances there are that someone's going to be able to find it, or you're going to use a password that you've used somewhere else, or something like that's going to happen. So that's a savvy decision. And, other things like not requiring these archaic, weird, like you have to have a number, an uppercase letter, and a symbol in your password, that kind of thing. Just make a 13-character long password. That's a lot more secure than, an 8-character long password that has a bunch of weird characters in it.
Right.
Because if they're doing a dictionary attack, it's just going to go and throw everything it can at it anyway.
And certainly, as we discussed last week, two-factor authentication raises the bar that much more. But one thing I think, and with this kind of expands the conversation a little bit, is at some point we've got to move beyond passwords, don't we? I mean, there's got to be something more secure. Which is it? Biometrics? Is it our fingerprint, face print, DNA? Something? Where do we go to be more secure? How do we get more secure?
Yeah, there's a danger in that too, because now with biometrics, we start having identifiers that are more closely related to us and to who we are, that weren't there before. That now exist as a data point that can be used to analyze who we are, to analyze our interactions online, and I don't know.
You can't change it,
right?
If it's compromised.
Yeah,
right.
And it's tough. It's hard to say. It's hard to say where we go. And then I don't know, when you go a little bit further into this, when you start learning more about it and learning about how to encrypt emails and how some of the authentication factors work, and how public ID and a private ID and all these kind of things, it gets complicated really, really fast. And the average person isn't going to be able to keep up with that. And it's not, they shouldn't have to. And there needs to be a simpler way for us to engage with this kind of stuff. Right.
Father Michael, do you think this is all way too complicated still? I mean, is this the problem? Is that making yourself secure and securing email, securing your home, IoT, Internet of Things, and is it all just, as we said in the beginning, it's just too complicated?
It does stress me out a little bit, I have to say. I got, it's been a few years now. I got the 1Password app on my phone to, like you said, try to have to kind of have a system. But that hasn't solved the problem, because, like you said, you do this so often. All of us have, maybe not as many as you, Dom, but a lot of passwords. And for most people, it's not even on their radar. And so I think just having that, some level of common sense of how far you're going to go. I know that somebody gave me a Google Home for Christmas a few years ago. And eventually, I think after I went in the app and listened to all the recordings of me yelling at it to shut its alarm off in the morning, that Google now had. Like, I'm not sure if I want this listening to me all the time. And just have to make those choices for yourself about what you're willing to trust. And if you're not willing to take those steps to make yourself, especially if your kids or your family are involved, then maybe be a little more hesitant about what you let in.
Right. I see the Amazon Echo for Kids product that they're selling, and I'm thinking, I really don't want to put that in my kid's bedroom. I've got one here in the office. I got one in the kitchen. But in the kid's bedroom, that's an Echo too far for me.
Well, but I will say that at least some of these companies are being upfront about what you're putting in your kids' rooms, because we've had toys for years that have had microphones in them, that have had internet capability attached to that microphone, that have had cameras in them for whatever purpose, and they haven't been completely honest about what the item has been capable of. And so we bought it and put it in our kids' rooms and didn't even know that it was there. So at least now companies are getting more aware of needing to tell us about that stuff.
Right. And that there's enough people out there banging on these things, hacking on them to see what they're doing and what they're listening to, that they're usually, if it's in there, people are finding it. It's getting caught. So, okay. Yeah. All right. So when you're buying your kids Christmas presents, This is something to think about when you're doing that. All right. But the bottom line here with this story is if you've got a Ring or if you've got Internet of Things cameras in or around your house, make sure that you could do two-factor authentication. Make sure they can be secure. Look them up online and see if if anybody's talking about that they're hacked or how to if there's articles out there about how to hack your brand of camera, that might be something to be concerned about. So do a little searching, but it does behoove us. There is a responsibility on us as consumers. As hard as they make it for us, still, it's not as easy as it should be. But we need to have good password hygiene, good security, and two-factor authentication wherever we can. That's our new mantra on this podcast. Good passwords, two-factor authentication. That's what we're gonna suggest that. All right.
2FA and good passwords. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of SQPN, with a special message. The StarQuest Network is fulfilling its mission to explore the intersection of faith and pop culture, and in the past year we've reached stunning new heights. Our programs are reaching broad new audiences with a message that helps us discern good entertainment, make sense of the world, and share the gospel with others. We continue to launch new shows and bring back great shows. We just relaunched Secrets of Star Wars, which comes at the perfect moment to capture the excitement over the new show, The Mandalorian, and the climax of the new Star Wars movies. The support of our audience is vital to this work and has helped us grow closer to meeting our financial obligations. For that, we are very grateful. But we still need to close the gap. Every new gift extends our deadline, but until we eliminate our deficits, the future of StarQuest and your favorite shows remain in question. This is why it's crucial we hear from you this Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits receive most of their support for the year. If you're already a supporter of StarQuest, we are very grateful, and we ask you to prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. If you are not yet a supporter, please become one now. We urgently need your help, and every gift counts. Could you give $15 or even just $10 per month? That lets us provide more than 40 hours of professionally produced shows with compelling content. We have special thank you gifts for donors at several giving levels. If you are a business owner or just want to provide a leadership level of support, we now have a special giving level for sponsors, like in public broadcasting. For $500 per month, you or your business can sponsor one of the shows on our network. Listeners will hear a message in every episode thanking you for your sponsorship and giving your website. We'll also have your name and link on the SQPN webpage and in the show notes of every episode during your sponsorship. Whatever level of support you can offer, whether large or small, please show your support for SQPN this Christmas, and remember that your gifts are tax deductible. Just go to sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. And may God bless you and yours as we approach the celebration of our Lord's birth. So our second story tonight comes in from a listener, sent in by listener James Hamill. Sorry, James, if I mispronounced that. It's a New York Times article that talks about this particular circumstance, a little different kind of technology here, biotech. A man who had leukemia had a bone marrow transplant, and that's a fairly common procedure. It's not rare anymore, the bone marrow transplant, that sort of thing. He found that his donor's DNA began to be expressed in his own body and traveled to unexpected parts of his body, including into his reproductive organs, shall we say. I'm not sure if kids listen, so I don't want to be too direct, but let's say that there could be kids born of him and his wife who might have someone else's DNA at play here, possibly. This is a term that technically we've heard about called chimerism, chimera being a mythical creature that was part lion, part goat, part serpent. And chimerism we've known about for years because it sometimes happens when a woman is pregnant with twins, and one of the twins at very early stages, like in the multicellular fetus stage, one of the twins dies and its DNA incorporates into the other fetus, and that person can grow up with two sets of DNA. And there was an episode of CSI where someone committed a crime and their chimera DNA got, so you've probably seen that if you watch crime procedurals at all. But this is different, and tens of thousands of people every year get bone marrow transplants, And so this is an interesting question that it raises for us, not just in biology. It doesn't apparently, and you guys can tell me if you've encountered this in your reading on this. They're not really worried about this from a medical standpoint. It's not like that that having this different set of DNA could hurt them medically. Did you encounter anything where it said that, either of you?
No.
It didn't seem like that was an issue at all.
Mm.
But in two cases, it becomes an issue, as in criminal work. So when you're doing DNA testing for a crime, but also in this new DNA archaeology, genealogy. Sorry, genealogy is the word I'm looking for. DNA genealogy stuff, which is being used in criminal searching. If you listen to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, one of our other SQPN podcasts, we did an episode on how we caught the Golden State Killer, and they caught him by this DNA comparison through a these do a cheek swab and send it in and find out where your ancestors came from. Well, they can use these databases to kind of see who's related to whom, and this can mess with that. And so what do you guys think of this issue, this problem? I mean, is it a problem, and what do we do about it? Should we be concerned about it? What do you think, Thomas? We'll go to you this time.
I think this is such an interesting field because I am very much in the camp of post-humanism and seeing how it kind of fits with our Catholic moral standpoint. So, we're moving to this era where we can keep people alive longer. We can save lives that really would not have been able to be saved years ago, saved by a miracle. And now all of a sudden it's just a medical practice that we do. And this is one of those cases where we have that having a repercussion that we weren't expecting. And now we have to look at, like, what does that do? What does that mean? What does it mean that this person now has another person's DNA in them? And especially when you come to something like this, where it's possibility that that person is dead and this person now has their DNA in them. And, like, what does that mean? what,
right.
How much does our DNA define us? And I love looking at this question from that angle and, like, really thinking about, I like the ship of Theseus concept, which, if you've ever been a Star Trek fan and talking about the transporters, like, how much can you replace of a ship and still have it be the same ship that you started with? So if Theseus leaves the port with a certain ship and he replaces the mast and then the bow and then all of the different pieces of the deck, at what point does it stop being the same ship? And I'm wondering, with this kind of situation, if the DNA progresses so far, like, at what point does this person become another person? It's like a really interesting thought.
Well, how much of us, just from a biological standpoint, how much of us as adults is the same cellular material as when we were newly conceived?
Right.
Probably not much, if anything. I don't know if there's actually an answer to that. It'd be an interesting question for a biologist to answer.
There's actually an answer to that. Every 7 years, apparently, you are an entirely different person. Like, you do not have the same stuff in you every 7 years.
So from a spiritual standpoint, the soul persists. It's the same soul, but we are body-soul composites, as from a Catholic point of view. So what does that mean for us? That's an interesting philosophical question. I'm not sure. Metaphysical question. Is there an answer to that? Obviously we're still the same people. So are we our DNA from a metaphysical, theological standpoint? What do you think? Father, I'll turn to you as the expert on all things theological and metaphysical.
I was hoping I could hide.
Well, anyway, what is your unofficial opinion on this? Maybe a speculative theological opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I think I'd heard in the past that idea that every 7 years we're replaced. That not replaced, but we're new, we're refreshed. And I feel like, so God built that into how we work and how our bodies work. And I think that's a good part of the answer, that growing and just growing as a person and becoming an adult person involves that change. And so, like, in this story, this man, it's not giving him a disease. It's not doesn't seem to be morally wrong in any way. I think it does go to show that we are more than our body, because that's sort of an argument we have again and again, that we're just biological. And so, and I mean, I don't know, in a sci-fi novel or story, this might be a way that somebody gets superpowers or becomes possessed by another person. But we see like, no, we're more than that. And I think it shows the interesting connection of soul and body, that you need both to be human. That's what it is to be human, is having both. But you can't overpower one with the other, that he's not a new person now on the metaphysical level, even if you do a test and you can see somebody else's DNA.
Right. And also that we need both to be ourselves. Like, and my body needs my soul and my body together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not merely a meat puppet for the soul, but neither am I a conveyance for, like, I'm not merely just dragging my soul along behind me either. I mean, I am both, which is an interesting idea to consider. One of the things that came out in this story was that they found that this particular fellow with the transplant, the bone marrow transplant, after 4 years, and we'll mention again, all of his semen had been replaced. The DNA in it had been replaced by the donors. So again, if he and his wife were to have children, they would have the DNA of the donor that would be theirs. What do you? I mean, from a theological and moral and ethical standpoint, I don't know, but ethical, but moral standpoint, they're his kids, right? But in a way that doesn't relate to their DNA. It's a very interesting question of what it means to in the theological term of generating, to father children, to sire children, both biologically but also spiritually. Mm-hmm. It brings up some interesting questions about that.
I'd be interested to see this, if the same thing happens in women as often, or is possible in women, because when you talk about all of these DNA testing things, it's always the string of the mother's DNA that gets analyzed, and that's one of the things they talk about, like in the crime shows and the crime procedurals too. It's always like they can attach you to the mother, but they can't do the same thing as easily with the father's DNA. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if maybe the fact that he's a man is what's causing this to be a possibility. And I'm so disappointed in this article that it's not a scientific, like, it's not a big, it's not the scientists that are looking at this as in depth. It's the criminal investigators and the crime labs that are looking at it. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many questions that I want answered on a scientific level about, like, well, what does this do? Like, let's do a study and let's see how many different people that have had this happen. Does it happen to women? Does their reproductive system get overtaken? Because they've already had all of their genetic material is there from inception. So that's, or from conception. That's like the way it works. So it's an interesting difference between the two.
That is really different point. I didn't think about that going in, that for women, that's all already there. And just the idea, I don't know, like, just as they have children, it's just interesting, like, what do those kids look like, and how does that affect, what does it really affect? It gets into the nature versus nurture thing in a way that you don't really see that often.
We should point out that in the article that we're referring to, it does say that these researchers said, well, no, it's impossible to pass on someone else's genes in children. And I'm thinking, but if all the DNA in the semen has been, I don't understand why that would be impossible. If they said all the DNA in the semen has been changed over to the donors, then why wouldn't that be possible? But there's some other intriguing cases here, like the trying to identify the victim of a car crash, who by sight was male, whose DNA came up as female. But then when they checked another part of the body, it came up as male, and another part of the body came up as. Turns out he'd received a bone marrow transplant from his daughter. And so he was carrying his daughter's DNA around in his body. But given how things like identity and sexual identity and gender being assigned and all these other questions about identity are up in the air, this just adds more muddiness to the waters, doesn't it? it makes it trickier to because you can't just simply say, well, you are whatever your DNA is,
or biometric security measures,
which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, how dedicated are you to hacking into somebody's equipment? Will you take a bone marrow transplant?
That's a good question. Or yeah, I mean, if I'm worried about someone else being able to access all of my data, will I be willing to give a bone marrow transplant to be a donor?
Exactly.
That becomes a question, and should be concerning for people who work in cancer, treating people with cancer, who rely on. This is a question they need to answer, because it will come a day maybe where this is an issue for that. That would be another. We're always coming up with interesting science fiction premises on this. That would be a very interesting science fiction premise where a bone marrow transplant recipient is able to then access the life of whoever they gave them the transplant. Oh, that's like a little dystopian sci-fi going there.
Yeah,
it's even
it's a
deeper
Philip Dick
than
novel. It's already got to exist, I'm sure, somewhere.
Yes, he's probably written it somewhere.
Deeper than Minority Report, even.
Yeah,
exactly.
Philip K. Dick wrote the novel, and someone else is turning it into a completely different show or movie, because that's Philip K. Dick makes the idea. But whenever they translate it into a movie or TV show, they say that's a very interesting idea. We're going to do something completely different than what he did with.
It has nothing to do with
it. All right. That's very interesting. Very that will bear watching, and there's probably more to come on that topic. So we'll keep an eye on that. So we got a couple other headlines we can take a look at, and one of these this is a fun one. This is a bit of a technology related news, which is related to a website. So if you're of a certain age, and maybe even if you're younger, you'll remember an iconic comic strip. Iconic is an overused term, and I'm trying to use it less, but if anything applies, this applies. The Far Side was one of those newspaper comic strips that were just everybody looked at, everybody watched, everybody understood it. There were jokes, there were in-jokes. Like, I would often, if I did something obviously silly, like push on a door that's supposed to open toward me, I would say, "Oh, School for the Gifted," which references a Far Side comic strip, where it's this one panel and it's this visual joke, and you get it immediately. So anyway, Gary Larson famously was at the top of his game from 1980 to 1995, and then just retired from comics and has been gone and never put his stuff on the internet until now. TheFarside.com is his new website, where he promises to start putting his comics online, and that we'll even get new Far Side comics. So what do you guys think? Are you fans of the Far Side?
Yes, I love it. Oh, it's so great. I have an 11-year-old who absolutely adores the Far Side too. So the boneless chicken farm is a regular topic of discussion for us, where you overanalyze how something is made, and then you go back and think about like what it must have looked like on the farm. And so I'm super excited about this. I think this is a great addition to the internet.
Yeah, I feel like Gary Larson kind of got internet humor decade at least before the internet. You got it. You know what I mean? He was the original internet humor, that sort of semi-snarky slice of life sort of thing that it just kind of tickled the funny bone. And but you also had to be a little smart to get it, almost like New Yorker comics, but a little more for the rest of us, shall we say?
Right.
How about you, Father? Far Side, was that around you? Was that the thing for you when you were a kid?
Yeah, I just looked it up. There was a book at my parents' house, and I think it's still at my parents' house, called The Prehistory of the Far Side, which was about how he came up with it and how it grew. And I think it was I had read like the comics page every single day, but it was the first time I was like, oh yeah, there are people who come up with this stuff, and it's an art form, and that it's really stuck with me. And looking at it now, it's almost like the perfect Instagram account. That there's so many comics artists on Instagram and on the internet in general, but just that single panel, it's perfect. It's a meme, and that's the way we communicate now. And I would say like Far Side got me into there's lots of web comics that I still follow now because of appreciating what he did with that it was funny and smart and just communicated so much in such a small space.
You're right. It kind
Definitely.
of was the original meme, like these one panel
Yeah.
strips. There's one, like if you look at his website, like for today as we record this, it's two guys sitting in an office, like this bare office with one window and desks that face each other. And one guy says, the other, one day, Wilson, I'll be sitting at that desk. And it's funny because there's no reason why that desk is better than his desk. They're perfectly the same size, co-equal in dignity and in presence. You know, I mean, just but it's sort of that. It gets to the pettiness of human nature sometimes. You know, that sort of stuff. The one I was talking before, the School for the Gifted. It was a drawing of a school of exterior, and this nerdy looking kid standing at the door to the school, pushing on the door, trying to get in. You know, his head down pushing, so not really paying attention. Big sign on the door that says pull to enter. And then the sign on the school says, you know, something School for the Gifted. And, you know, in other words, it's that funniness of like, yeah, as smart as they are, sometimes they don't even have a little bit of common sense. You know, that sort of snarky, you know, sort of bent look at human nature and life and everything. So that's always fun. Another fun one was the, you know, how dinosaurs really went extinct, and it shows them smoking, you know, that sort of stuff.
Right.
I mean, just
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
That.
And they were
Well, that's the great thing is like you can have a conversation about these and it immediately summons up the image for you. That's always amazing to me talking about the Gary Larsons, is that you've seen it once and it just sticks with you.
Right.
And they were shared too. I think that's part of the, like, you saw these cut out everywhere, that photocopied from the paper or whatever,
Right.
that all over offices and stuff, that like, just like, I mean, we share stuff now that we find funny. These were just, they were everywhere because they were so simple.
And that's one of the reasons why he had refrained from putting these online before now. He's, you know, when he was explaining why he's doing this now and why he hadn't until now, he said, as a quote from him, years ago when I slowly started realizing I had a second publisher and distributor for my work known as Anyone with a Scanner and Associates, I did find it unsettling enough to write an open letter to whom it may concern, explaining best as I could why I preferred that the people doing this would kindly refrain. You know, there were websites run by fans who were, you know, putting his comics up, and he would ask them not to do that and explain this dilutes my income. And, you know, most people, you know, still don't understand, you know, why publishing other people's copyrighted works is bad for the person that you're apparently a fan of. So he says now that he hopes that by giving the comics an official home on the internet will help, as he puts it, help temper the impulses of the infringement inclined, which is a nice way of putting it. So, you know, so it's interesting how concerns about infringement pushed him to publish online as opposed to his previous impulse, which was to pull things back from online. So very interesting. All right. So another headline we had was another one of these heartwarming stories of Apple technology helping somebody live their life better. And I know how sometimes this stuff can be manipulated for PR purposes, but I thought this was interesting in and of itself. Apart from that, so the Apple Watch, the latest Apple Watches have a function where they can monitor noise levels. And if the noise level gets above a certain amount into harmful range, it will alert you and say, hey, you're in you're in noise that could begin to cause permanent damage to your hearing. You might want to protect yourself. So what happened was this Texas dad says that his son, who has autism, had an inability to control how loud he is. He didn't understand how, just even talking, how loud he would be. And he found that the Apple Watch warnings was helping the son to, like, where other people warning him, you know, asking him to be quiet, didn't do anything. It was the technology warning him and asking him that helped him to begin to moderate his noise level in a way that they haven't had in years. I just thought it was very interesting, this unexpected benefit from this technology. What do you think of this as you read this?
Yeah, I think it's easy to be cynical about the Apple events. It's that we're so freaking out and people are having such a fan emotional experience over phones and stuff. But the thing that always gets me are those videos of like, I had a heart attack and my watch saved my life or helped me get in shape or whatever. And it's good to see these things, that it's technology genuinely helping people, that it's not for money. It's just, this is a feature and it's making a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah. How about you, Thomas? What do you think about this bit of technology?
Teaching kids like this. I know that what's going on for this kid is that they can sit and say everyone else is saying for me to be quiet, but that's on them. That's them saying that I need to be quiet. They just don't understand how I talk. But then when they actually get the hard feedback that says in numbers, here's where things are happening, they can take that and say, well, that's objective. That's something that's not just subjective to this other person listening to me. That's an objective piece of information that I need to engage with and do something about. And it actually works for a lot of kids. You'd be surprised. I've put up a noise monitor in my room before, and had a group of fourth graders come in and said, I just want you guys to watch this while you're working today and see how loud you actually get. And it changed their perspective on how loud they thought they were actually being in class. They did not know that they got as loud as they did. So it's nice to see this kind of stuff being used in these kind of ways. And I love there are a lot of instances, surprisingly, where especially autistic kids and kids who are on the spectrum, that the engaging with technology is easier for them because they don't have to read all of the emotional cues that normally throw them off in a social setting. And so they can learn more directly from sometimes from a robot or from a video instructor that has a flat intonation to their face, because they don't have to do all of that extra work to try and figure out what's going on.
That would be I wonder whether the Google Home, the Amazon Echo would also, in Siri, would also be a benefit to the kids like that, because there aren't that need for that social cue, that social emotional intelligence quotient to be there. It's an interesting question. So apparently the way it worked with this kid was that the dad will show him his watch and show it going from green to yellow. And the first time he did that, the kid immediately, first he wanted to see, he would talk and it would go up, and then immediately started talking quietly. It's not that the dad asked him to change, but he was just showing him, and it changed everything. Including for the poor dog, who he says would run from the room whenever the boy would start talking. And that that's kind of neat to see that how it has helped this family in this unexpected ways. But you're right. I have a fourth grade age child in my own house who has that loud tendency. So maybe I'll see if I can get that to work with him. I'm not sure it will, but we'll see. Awesome. Very good. So let's move on to the last part of our show, and we'll talk about our picks of the week. Father Michael, what's your pick of the week this week?
Yeah, so a problem I've had as a priest, and basically since I started preaching, is you read or hear just like great things and like, I want to use this. This applies to this thing. And then maybe you forget about it or you write it down and you don't know where you wrote it down. And somebody introduced me to Google Keep, just a service that Google provides. And it's just basically kind of like for notes. And it's a really simple app. You can type into it. You can write with your finger. You can add pictures. You can do like voice recognition and enter it that way. But it's basically, for me, it's become this great way of storing little quotes and ideas where I can just search it really easily. And so if I'm trying to find something that I know I heard before or find something that'll make an example more clearly, it's a really helpful app, and just it's not complicated, and you can because it's Google, you can look at it wherever you are, and whether it's on your phone or computer. And I think for teachers, or if you're, I don't know, an author or something like that, where you want to keep track of little snippets like that, it's helpful. And especially as a priest writing homilies all the time, it's been a very useful tool. So Google Keep.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's similar in concept, I think, to things like Evernote and Microsoft OneNote and Apple Notes. But if you are in the Google ecosystem, it's part of it. It's just part of it, and it's really easy to get stuff from, say, Gmail or Chrome into Keep. So yeah, that's a good suggestion. Very good.
And it's easy to share stuff from Keep out to other people too. So that's that's one thing that I've done with my kids. Like I'll be writing something up, and then I'll say, "Hey, I want you to take this over," and then I'll just share it with my kids, and then they have a copy of it they can keep working on it with.
Great idea. Thomas, what's your pick?
All right, so my pick is a little off the beaten path. It's going into my nerdy zone here. I have been a Dungeons and Dragons player since I was in middle school, so it's been around half my life, basically, a little over half my life at this point. And so I have started playing a new game called Starfinder. It's by the company that makes Pathfinder, which is Paizo Publishing. It's kind of an offshoot of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a science fiction-y game, and it does have core rule books and it has dice and the whole 9 yards. But just recently they paired up with Amazon, and they made an Alexa skill that's called Starfinder. So it's Starfinder Alexa skill, and you just ask Alexa to open the Starfinder skill, and it's basically a choose your own adventure novel. So for anybody who's not initiated into role playing at all, it's like a choose your own adventure novel. It's read very well. It has voicings for all the characters. It has an inventory system that you can easily access by asking questions of Alexa. And it's very good. It's actually really well done. And if you're interested in getting into Dungeons and Dragons, or if you want to see what Dungeons and Dragons is about, it's a very good way to do that. If you want an interesting science fiction novel read to you that you interact with, it's another this is another kind of person that would want this. I just thought it was really impressive that they did this kind of thing on the level of professionalism that they did with this Alexa skill.
Very interesting. Yeah, those skills have been pretty much limited so far, in my view, to really sort of basic stuff. I mean, trying to interact with a voice control when you have to remember all of the controls can be tricky. But with a choose your own adventure, I mean, that's sort of, if you've ever played one, it's sort of built in. Look left, move right, head north. All that sort of stuff, or your choices are constrained already, so that's kind of interesting. I'm curious. The one game I play on my Echo with my wife and I do it when we're making dinner is the Jeopardy game, where you play Jeopardy, where we're competing to see who gets the answer first, verbally. But that's interesting. I like that. It is off the beaten path, but it's a clever use of technology. So my pick is a piece of software called Verbum, which is Latin for the word, and it comes from a company called Logos. And Verbum it's called Catholic Study Software, and it's been around a long time. And it's essentially a library of books, Catholic books, that are all wrapped inside this database, this software that's designed to help you study, to bring these references together, to connect things, one thing to another. It's kind of hard to explain it verbally. You're really going to have to see it. But it's a great set of software. I've been using a review copy for more than a month now. And one of the things that's, at first I thought, oh, it's just a Bible study product. Well, I mean, it's not like I'm writing homilies or, writing books about the Bible. But it's actually much more than that. The books that it covers are things like Advent daily devotions and other books that are resources beyond just the academic or the homiletic. It really takes you into just the devotional life as well. Like, so for all of Advent, I've been having a daily Advent readings. We read the lectionary for the day. Can read a devotional meditation for Advent and that sort of thing, and you get to go through Christmas and Lent and Easter and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very interesting product. It has a range of prices, and you can buy a whole library, which is it's expensive until you compare it to what it would cost to actually buy those individual books, whether physically or ebook. And frankly, I'm all not into buying physical books anymore because I have way too many of those for my house. So but it's really a neat, and you can add books. You can buy new books, and they have sales, and they give you free books and all kinds of stuff like that. And they're great books right now on sale. They have The Blessing of Christmas by Joseph Ratzinger, the former the Pope Benedict Emeritus Pope. That sort of thing. Really interesting, and they have on sale for $8, $8.39, which is a pretty good deal. So check it out, verbum.com. I'll put a link. We'll have a link to all of our picks in the show notes, and you can check those out. So one final programming note, folks. After today, next Wednesday, we record this on Wednesday. Next Wednesday is Christmas. The Wednesday after that is New Year's Day. We're not going to be recording on either of those days. So the next episode of the Secrets of Technology will be out in the new year on January 9th. You should look for it, and we'll see you then. We'll be gearing up for that'll be our right around our first year anniversary. We've been doing this for a year now. We'll be gearing up for all of the big announcements that are coming at CES and all that stuff that comes at the very beginning of the year. So there'll be plenty to talk about anyway. As we wrap,
I'm hoping they will have baked cookies on the space station by that time, so that we can talk about how the baked cookies came out.
That's
because
right.
I'm so interested in that experiment.
That's right.
But they don't have any data for it yet, so I want to know.
Let's go all the way back to that. Yes, that's true. So as we wrap up, we do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Technology, including Chris E., James S., Jonathan H., Roman S., and Ryan Z. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us for this time. What do you think of our discussion? What we talked about with either the Internet of Things and the Amazon Ring problems, the DNA chimerism problems, and the other stuff we talked about? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or you can send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And like I said, we'll have links to all of the links from our discussion and the picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. If you have not done so, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. Until next time, Father Michael Gossett, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Thank you for having me.
Thomas Senherho, thank you as well.
It was a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest, and Merry Christmas, everyone.